Welcome to this episode of the Buzzin the Tower podcast. I'm your host, as always, Brian, and we're jumping back into my 1994 Strike series here. Took a couple weeks off there and did a little football podcast for everybody, and we got baseball season winding down, and if you're a Twin Cities sports fan, hopefully this is a nice distraction from the misery that is the Minnesota Twins and the tie that was the Minnesota Vikings, and now we have Jimmy Butler wanting to get his way out of town. So I figured I'd switch it back up a little bit. We'll talk a little bit of a Ken Griffey Jr. I think he was probably, everybody's favorite player growing up. You know, everybody in their backyard switching over to hit left-handed, flipping their hat backwards, wagging the bat, throw me that one low and inside so I can hit that uppercut. I think that was everybody's guy growing up. And, he's an incredibly talented guy on top of that, and he had that swag and that look about him. So, it was just it was the right era, right time for him to be the guy. But he was another guy who, once again, got his season cut short in 1994 because of that unfortunate strike. If you missed the other parts of this, they are up on both SoundCloud, and I believe all of them are also up on YouTube. So you can go back. I did one about Kirby Puckett and Greg Maddux and Frank Thomas. So please comment, like, share, subscribe, all the above. Anything helps. Once again, if there's any other players you'd like me to talk about, please just comment on Facebook or Twitter or whatever. But, all right, we'll jump into it. So, Griffey was the first overall pick in 1987, and I believe I read that he got a $16,000 signing bonus, which is just crazy to think about today. He didn't spend a whole lot of time in the minor leagues. He made his debut on April 3rd of 1989. At age 19, and he was a dominating force from the minute he stepped in. He also got to play with his dad for a couple years there in Seattle, including, those guys being the only father-son duo to hit back-to-back home runs in a game. On top of that, he quickly morphed into the no doubt best talent in the game, probably the best overall player. You can make an argument for Barry Bonds at that time probably as well, but Griffey, 13-time All-Star, 10-time Gold Glove. He won seven Silver Slugger awards. He was the MVP in 1997. He was also voted into the Hall of Fame with a record number of votes in 2016. 437 out of 440 votes for a 99.3%. I would like to talk to the three people that didn't vote for Ken Griffey Jr. and see really what their deal is, because, that's absolute chaos to not vote him in, but he did end up hitting 630 home runs in his career. Now, after he got traded away from Seattle, he definitely had a problem with injuries. There's a lot of leg injuries and stuff like that sort of kind of had the same effect as the strike did in 1994 and kind of abbreviated his career. I did previously write an article kind of extrapolating out, what could have been had he stayed healthy in his prime in Cincinnati. So I would encourage you to go read that on medium.com. A little shameless self-promotion there. But, you talk about a dominating player. He was the best. In terms of a generational player, you talk about like a Mike Trout. That was the guy in the 90s. So it's kind of sad to see such a glimmering hope of a star sort of get taken away in such a hurry by injuries. But 630 home runs is still 630 home runs. But 1994, specifically, in 111 games, he hit 323. The 402 on base, 674 slugging, which means he had a 1.076 OPS. So that's pretty incredible right there. He also hit 40 home runs. He scored 94 runs, knocked in 90 runs that year, and had a 6.9 WAR. At the time of the strike, the Mariners were in third place behind Texas and Oakland, but they were not far out of it. And you think of that Mariners team in the mid-'90s, and it's kind of a head-scratcher as to how that team didn't win a World Series. Obviously they ran into Cleveland every year, and Cleveland was just a juggernaut. But when you talk about Griffey, and you got Buhner, and you got the Martinez boys, Edgar and Tino, you got Joey Cora, you got Randy Johnson at the top of that staff. Eventually the A-Rod comes up as a precocious 18-year-old in 1995, 96. It's kind of hard to figure out how that team didn't pull one out, but they never were really able to pull it together in the playoffs. And even after Griffey was gone, you think of in 2001 when I believe they still have the record for wins in a season. I think it's something like 124. They got to the playoffs and they just couldn't pull it together. So it'll forever be a mystery to me. But so if we extrapolate Griffey's season from 111 games out to 162, he was on pace for 58 home runs, which would have been a career high, 136 runs scored, which would have been a career high, 130 runs batted in, and also around a 10.0 WAR, which also would have been a career high. So he was on pace for maybe his best season, which is saying something considering the guy hit 56 home runs 2 different times in a season. So once again, another sad song for baseball fans. The what if, what if Griffey got to finish that year? Maybe the Mariners make a run, maybe not. But once again, thanks, Bud Selig. We'll never know. The one tool I have been using previously on these podcasts as well has been the Baseball Reference neutralized batting tool. So you can take a hitter's season from one era and sort of morph it into the current era to kind of get a snapshot versus today's stats as to, what would his season have been had he been in today's current hitting environment. So Griffey's neutralized stats, 1994 morphed into 2018, 303 batting, 380 on base percentage, 632 slugging, and still over 1,000 OPS at 1.012. On top of that, 52 home runs, 109 runs batted in, and 114 runs. So you're basically talking about an MVP season right there, regardless of if you consider, you see what Mookie Betts and Mike Trout and JD Martinez are doing this year. Those numbers are astronomical even today. So it shows you what kind of a dominating hitter that Griffey was during that era. Talk about being feared at the plate. It wasn't until 98 and 2001 when those guys were all juiced to the gills. You saw the treatment Bonds got, but when you saw Griffey come up in a big spot, he just looked like the guy. It was like, just sort of struck fear in a pitcher's eyes, and he that's all you could say about the guy. Just a dominating hitter and truly an icon of his era. So it's ultimate what could have been once again. But the next year, 1995, he only played in 72 games, but he did have his memorable game-winning run against the Yankees in the playoffs, which, if you look at the box score for that game, it's pretty wild to see, Mariano Rivera come in out of the pen, and Randy Johnson comes in out of the pen in that game, and a young shortstop named Alex Rodriguez makes an appearance. But you see the clip played over and over again with Dave Niehaus on the call. Edgar Martinez hits the double. Griffey comes flying around the bases, so that's sort of an iconic moment. Yeah, there in 1995, but once again, they ran into Cleveland in the LCS and got knocked out. So he ended up staying a few more years with the Mariners. He was traded to Cincinnati before the 2000 season for Mike Cameron and 3 others. Eventually would play quite a while in Cincinnati and ended his career played for the White Sox and then played kind of an odd partial season back with the Mariners as their DH. And there's rumors of him falling asleep in the clubhouse and stuff like that. So but let me know, what do you think? Do you think Griffey maybe would have hit 100 more home runs? Did he have a shot at, obviously, Hank Aaron's record, 755, and Barry Bonds broke it? Whichever record you think is the standard, do you think Griffey breaks that if he stays healthy? Do you think he hits 20 more home runs in 94? I'm curious to hear what you think. But, once again, we'll be back hopefully with more of these. If there's somebody else you want to hear, just comment, like, subscribe, all the above helps. So I'll be glad to take any criticisms, any input, anything like that. So until next time, you might hear some postseason baseball. You might hear more football. You'll probably hear some Grant's Fantasy Slant coming back. So just let me know what you guys think. And until next time, we will see you later.